The deepest wounds are not carved by strangers. They are etched by the hands you once trusted most. But what if I told you that their betrayal was not your ending? It was God's way of lifting you higher. There are moments in life that cut deeper than any blade, moments that leave a wound no one else can see, but you feel every single day. And perhaps the sharpest of all those wounds is the sting of betrayal, not from an enemy, but from the people you trusted most. Those you let close enough to see your vulnerabilities, those you believed would guard your heart with the same care you gave theirs. You never imagined they would be the ones to twist the knife. You never imagined the hand you once held in trust could become the very hand that pushed you into the storm. And yet here you are, standing in the rubble of what you thought was loyalty, asking the question that echoes through your soul: why would God let this happen? It feels unfair, almost cruel. After all, you were faithful. You were kind. You showed up for them when no one else did. You defended them when others doubted them. You gave without keeping score. And still, they took your goodness and turned it into an opportunity to wound you. And now, the silence they've left behind is louder than their betrayal itself. But what if I told you this is not the end? What if I told you that the very betrayal that threatened to break you is the same betrayal God will use to lift you higher than you've ever been? God's ways are not like ours. We think in terms of fairness, reciprocity, and human loyalty, but He thinks in terms of growth, destiny, and eternal purpose. Sometimes, the only way for God to move you from where you are to where you're meant to be is to let the people you trusted push you out of comfort into calling. Because if they had stayed loyal, you would have stayed small. If they had remained by your side, you might never have discovered the strength that was waiting within you. Think about Joseph, betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, thrown into prison, yet every step of that betrayal was a step closer to the palace God had prepared for him. What looked like destruction was actually redirection. The same is true for you. You see, betrayal forces you to look up when you can no longer look around. It strips away false securities so you can stand on the only security that cannot be shaken: God Himself. When everyone you trusted falls away, you find the one who has never failed, never left, and never betrayed you. And here is the part they didn't think about. Betrayal has a way of exposing what was never real, while positioning you for what is truly meant for you. Those who turned against you didn't derail your future. They became the unknowing instruments to propel you into it. God will use their actions to open doors they never wanted you to see, to place you in rooms they thought you'd never imagine possible. One day you'll look back and realize that the betrayal you thought would bury you was actually the seed that birthed your elevation. You'll understand that God did not abandon you to their cruelty. He was using their cruelty to free you from their limits. So yes, the pain is real. Yes, the loss is heavy. But the story isn't over. God is not done. And if you hold on, you will see the day when He takes the very thing that tried to destroy you and turns it into the very thing that defines your victory. When someone you trusted most turns against you, it is never random in the sight of God. Heaven does not sit in silence when your heart is wounded. Every tear is noticed, every wound is recorded. In God's divine economy, betrayal is not chaos, it is precision. He allows certain people to show their true nature, not to punish you, but to protect you from the harm you cannot yet see. We often pray for God to guide us, to keep us in His will, to lead us toward His promises. But here is the truth few want to hear. Sometimes his guidance is not a gentle hand, but a sharp separation. And when you refuse to walk away from what's damaging your soul, he will allow a betrayal so deep that you cannot return. Consider this. The disciples loved Jesus, but Judas loved his own agenda more. For 3 years, Judas walked with the Son of God himself, heard his teaching, saw his miracles, yet in the quiet chambers of his heart, greed and pride whispered louder than truth. God did not remove Judas from the 12 earlier, because the betrayal was part of the plan that would lead to salvation. Without that moment of betrayal, the cross and the redemption that followed would not have unfolded as it did. It is the same with you. The one who betrayed you may have been part of your life for years. You laughed with them, prayed with them, trusted them with secrets. But God saw something you could not. A heart that was no longer aligned with his will for your journey. And instead of letting their hidden disloyalty poison your destiny slowly, he allowed the mask to fall suddenly. This is why you should not spend your life chasing explanations from those who betrayed you. Their actions may never make sense in human logic because betrayal is a spiritual matter before it is a physical one. God, in his sovereignty, will sometimes permit the pain so that you will finally walk away from what you could never release on your own. Think of it like a shepherd pulling a sheep away from poisonous grass. To the sheep, it feels like loss. The sweet taste of the familiar is taken away. But to the shepherd, it is life-saving intervention. In the same way, your betrayal may feel like the destruction of trust, but in God's view, it is the preservation of your purpose. This is why you must resist the urge to fight for what God himself is removing. If he allowed the betrayal, it means that connection was never meant to survive the journey ahead. It is not abandonment by God. It is his mercy in disguise. And though your heart aches, it will one day praise him for shutting the door you didn't have the strength to close. When the people you trusted most betray you, it is not only a removal, it is a revelation. God will use betrayal as a mirror to show you the truth about others, and sometimes the truth about yourself. He does not expose to shame you, but to set you free. The betrayal you experienced was not just their decision, it was God's stage for unveiling what was hidden in the shadows. In the book of Psalms, David cries out, "If an enemy were insulting me, I could endure it. But it is you, my close friend, my companion with whom I once enjoyed sweet fellowship." This is the raw pain of trust violated. But notice what follows in David's life. That betrayal by those close to him drove him deeper into the presence of God, sharpened his discernment, and prepared him to lead with wisdom that only comes from suffering. His suffering, the same is true for you. Betrayal is not just about someone else's evil. It is about your preparation. God uses it to elevate your spirit above bitterness, to refine your heart so that when he places you in greater positions, you will recognize loyalty, and more importantly, you will recognize the counterfeit before it can harm you. So you think of Joseph again, the dreamer sold into slavery by his own brothers. On the surface, it looked like the end of his dreams, but in the unseen realm, God was using the betrayal to place him in the very path of his calling. If his brothers had not sold him, he would not have entered Egypt, would not have been positioned for leadership, and would not have been in place to save his family during famine. The betrayal was the key that unlocked the door to his destiny. You may not see it now, but God will one day reveal how the betrayal you suffered elevated your spirit to heights you could not have reached otherwise. It cleanses you of naivete, making you wise without making you hard. It teaches you to trust God's voice over human promises, It draws you into prayer that is more desperate, more honest, and more powerful than you ever prayed when life was easy. Betrayal also has a way of rearranging your circle. You may lose people you thought would be with you forever, but in the space they leave, God will bring those whose loyalty is not tested by convenience but anchored in truth. This is part of your elevation, surrounding you with those who will walk with you through storms, not only in sunshine. Short example. Imagine a tree that has grown for years surrounded by weeds. The weeds draw water from its roots, stunting its growth. The gardener removes the weeds and suddenly the tree grows taller, stronger, and its fruit multiplies. That's what betrayal does under God's hand. It clears away what has been silently draining you so you can grow into the fullness of who you are meant to be. In the end, betrayal exposes hearts, theirs and yours, and positions you to rise higher than you could have if the false remained hidden. God is not simply removing people from your life. He is preparing you for the platform where His glory will be revealed through you. When betrayal comes, it has a way of tearing your gaze away from where it has rested too long. You see, sometimes we lean too heavily on people, even good people, and without realizing it, we begin to place our security in their words, their loyalty, their presence. But God is a jealous God, not in pettiness, but in love. He knows that when your trust leans too much on human pillars, those pillars can be shaken, and so, in His mercy, He allows the shaking to reveal the only foundation that cannot be moved, Himself. Betrayal hurts because it removes what you thought was certain. It's not just the person you lose, it's the version of your life you built around them. When that crumbles, you are forced to look up. And in that upward gaze, you meet the one who never betrayed, never abandoned, never faltered. Think of Peter. He walked beside Jesus, saw miracles firsthand, and yet denied Him 3 times in His greatest hour of need. But after the denial came restoration. Not because Peter was perfect, but because Jesus knew that Peter's focus had to be redirected from his own strength to the grace and power of God. That betrayal, both Peter's and others, taught him where true faithfulness resides. The same happens in your life. When God allows betrayal, He is removing the false anchors. He is taking away the illusion that someone else's loyalty is what keeps you safe, and showing you that your true safety, your true provision, your true belonging is in Him. This is why the psalmist could say, "It is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in man." Not because people are always evil, but because even the best of people are limited. They can promise the world but fail under pressure. They can swear loyalty and then turn when the cost gets too high. God, however, is bound by His nature, and His nature is unchanging love and faithfulness. Short example. Imagine leaning against a wall that has stood for decades. One day, without warning, it collapses and you nearly fall. Your instinct is to reach for something stronger, something unshakable. That's what betrayal does. It collapses what you thought was solid, forcing you to cling to the one who is immovable. And here's the beauty. Once your focus shifts to God, you stop walking in fear of what people can do to you. You begin to understand that even if every human voice falls silent, His voice remains. Even if every familiar hand lets go, His hand holds you still. And in that realization, you find a freedom no betrayal can steal. The freedom to walk forward with God as your source, not people as your lifeline. There are moments when your life feels as though it has been split into before and after. Betrayal often marks that line. Before, you may have been content to stay where you were. The relationships were comfortable, The rhythm was predictable, the cost was low. After, you are no longer the same. Pain has pushed you into a new depth, and God uses that depth to awaken your calling. We see this clearly in the life of Joseph. Before his brothers betrayed him, he was a dreamer with a vision but no path. After the betrayal, God positioned him in places of testing, service, and leadership that would refine his character. The betrayal didn't just move him geographically, it moved him spiritually. It set him on the path toward the very purpose God had revealed in his dreams. Your betrayal may have felt like the tearing away of everything familiar, but in God's plan it is the doorway to everything necessary. The pain stripped away distractions. It closed chapters you would have never dared to end. And in that new emptiness, God planted the seeds of your true assignment. Sometimes calling comes not through gentle nudges, but through a forceful push. If God had whispered for you to move, you might have stayed. But betrayal can shove you out of the nest, not to let you fall, but to teach you how to soar. Think of Moses. Before he became the deliverer of Israel, he was driven out of Egypt by betrayal and fear. That exile became the training ground where God prepared him for a task far greater than his old life could have offered. What felt like the end was actually the beginning of a mission that would shape history. A short example. Picture a ship anchored in a harbor. It feels safe, but it was never built to stay there. One day a violent storm breaks the anchor's chain. The ship is tossed into the open sea. Frightening at first, but it is only there that it discovers what it was truly made for. Your betrayal works the same way. It cuts the chains to a life too small for your destiny. It sends you into uncharted waters, where God Himself becomes your compass. You may not understand why you had to leave the harbor the way you did, but one day you will look back and see that the storm was not your enemy, it was your launch. And perhaps this is why you feel the pull now. The betrayal that shattered your trust is also the spark igniting your mission. What they meant for harm is becoming the very force that propels you into God's calling for your life. Betrayal is not only about removing others from your life, it is also about refining you. When someone wounds you deeply, you face a choice. You can allow the pain to harden you into bitterness, or you can allow God to purify you through it. And make no mistake, before God places greater responsibility on your shoulders, He will purify your heart to carry it. You see, influence without purity is dangerous. Leadership without humility is destructive. God cannot elevate a heart still tangled in the need to prove something to those who left. So, when betrayal comes, it is a test and a cleansing. It forces you to bring the wound before God, not so He can erase the memory, but so He can remove the poison. David was anointed king long before he wore the crown, but between the promise and the throne came years of betrayal. Saul turned against him, hunted him, lied about him. Those years were not wasted. They were the fire that burned out pride, impatience, and revenge from David's heart, so that when he finally held the power to destroy his enemies, he chose mercy instead. That is the work betrayal can do in you. It teaches you to love without needing repayment. It teaches you to serve without watching who notices. It teaches you to trust God with your vindication instead of grasping for your own. And when you pass that test, you are ready for a higher platform because your heart is clean enough to handle it. Short example, imagine a goldsmith placing raw gold in the furnace. The heat is intense, but its purpose is not to destroy the gold. It's to bring the impurities to the surface so they can be removed. When the process is complete, the gold shines brighter, stronger, and more valuable than before. In the same way, betrayal is the furnace God uses to purify you for greater responsibility. If He is calling you to lead, to influence, to build, or to guide others, He will make sure that you do it from a place of wisdom, humility, and compassion, not from the wounds of your past. You may wonder why He couldn't prepare you another way, but the truth is, nothing reveals the state of your heart like betrayal. It exposes pride, reveals insecurities, and uncovers hidden resentments. And once those things are in the open, God can heal them. So when you feel the fire, remember, it's not meant to burn you away. It's meant to burn away what would have destroyed you if it had followed you into your next season. Betrayal has a way of disrupting your plans. You had envisioned a future with certain people in it, maybe a business partner, a family member, a close friend, and suddenly they're gone. The path you thought was straight is now scattered with debris, and in that moment you realize something. The timeline you were holding on to was never truly in your control. God's timing is rarely the same as ours. We want progress to be predictable, neat, and uninterrupted. But He works in seasons, not schedules. And sometimes, betrayal is the tool He uses to slow you down, redirect you, or accelerate you, depending on what His plan requires. Joseph's betrayal seemed to delay his dream, but in truth, it synchronized him with God's perfect timing. Had Joseph reached Egypt too soon, the famine would not have come yet. Had he arrived too late, the opportunity to save his family would have passed. Betrayal positioned him exactly where and when he needed to be. Your life works the same way. The people who left may have been part of your plan, but they were not part of God's timing. If they had stayed, they could have slowed your growth, clouded your judgment, or even pulled you in a direction that looked good but was outside His will. A short example: think of a seed planted in the ground. If you dig it up too soon, it dies. If you plant it too late, it misses the rain. Timing is everything, and the gardener knows exactly when to sow, when to prune, and when to harvest. Betrayal may feel like an interruption, but it is often a divine appointment in disguise. It forces you to stop chasing people and start waiting on God. And here's the truth: His timing is always attached to His protection. He knows what dangers you would have faced if your plans had succeeded without His blessing. This is why you must release the idea that betrayal has set you back. It hasn't. It has aligned you. The delay is not punishment, it's positioning. God is not scrambling to fix what happened. He already wrote this moment into your story, and when His timing comes, nothing will be able to stop the doors He opens. In the waiting, you will learn patience that is not passive but active, trusting, praying, preparing. And when the right moment arrives, you will understand why it couldn't have happened a day earlier or a day later. One of the most difficult things to see in the middle of betrayal is that it has not stolen your future. It has prepared you for it. The enemy will whisper that you've lost everything because of what they did, but the truth is, there are blessings ahead of you that those people could never have brought into your life. You see, some blessings require separation before they can arrive. God will not pour His greatest gifts into a place where disloyalty sits at the table. He will not entrust treasures to an environment where jealousy or selfishness can corrupt them. This is why He allowed those you trusted most to leave, because He has blessings for you that they could not handle, blessings that might have been wasted if they had remained. Look at Job. He lost almost everything: wealth, health, even the support of his closest circle. But when God restored him, He gave him double what he had before. And notice this: those who doubted Job's integrity, those who added to his pain with their words, were not the ones who brought the restoration. It was God alone. The blessing was too holy, too significant to be delivered through hands that had contributed to his suffering. The same is true for you. There are opportunities, resources, relationships, and callings ahead that the betrayers were never meant to touch. God saw the pride that would have risen in them if they had stayed. He saw the subtle ways they might have claimed credit for what only he could do. And in his wisdom, he removed them so that when the blessing comes, all glory points back to him. A short example. Imagine a farmer preparing to plant a rare and valuable seed. Before placing it in the soil, he clears away rocks and weeds, not because the seed is weak, but because the environment must be right for it to grow to its full potential. That's what betrayal does in God's hands. It clears the ground so your blessing can take root without threat. And here's the beautiful irony. Sometimes the very act of betrayal creates the opening for your blessing. The job you lost because of a colleague's lies becomes the space where a new, better career begins. The relationship that ended in deception frees you for a union rooted in truth. The friend who walked away makes room for someone whose loyalty is unshakable. When the blessing comes, you will realize that it was never truly because of them or despite them. It was always part of God's plan. They were never the source of your future. And once you see that, you will stop grieving the loss and start anticipating what is on the way. So, why did God let the people you trusted most betray you? Not because he didn't care, not because he was blind to your pain, but because he saw what you could not, the hidden dangers, the slow erosion of your purpose, the limits that would have kept you small. Betrayal is never pleasant, but in the hands of God, it is never wasted. It becomes a divine tool to separate you from what is not worthy of you, to reveal what is true, to purify your heart, to align your life with his timing, and to open doors no one can close. They thought they were ending something when they turned against you, but in truth they were unknowingly beginning the chapter God had been waiting to write. And this chapter will not be marked by their absence, but by his presence. One day, you will stand in the very place they said you'd never reach, holding blessings they thought you'd never see, and you will know without a doubt, it was all God. The betrayal was the path, the pain was the teacher, and the promise was always yours. And when that moment comes, you won't just thank him for the blessing, you'll thank him for the separation that made it possible.